Welcome. Just to make sure that everybody is in the room, this session is the one on community mapping, a tool to explore local sustainability issues. So that is the session that we are in this afternoon. And so welcome. Bonjour, Annie. So we will just start off our session this afternoon with a short land acknowledgement. And I know that you probably have heard this a few times now, but different people have been joining in at different times. Whoops. Oh. Okay, so this is actually, I'm just going to stop sharing that one. And I'm just going to make it easier rather than, we're just going to acknowledge the territory that we are on with the university. Sorry, I don't have the screen up right now. And I thought I had done all of what I needed to do. So thank you for joining us this afternoon and acknowledging the territory we are on. So this area is on Treaty 13 territory, and is also covered by the Dish with One Spoon Covenant Treaty as well. So one of the things that we've been asking people to do throughout the session is to share in the chat box where their territory is. People are coming from all parts of Ontario, all parts of Canada, and other countries as well, we've discovered. So if you wouldn't mind just sharing in the chat box what area, what treaty territory you're in. I happen to be in Mississauga, so I am on the treaty territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit, and it is also covered by the Dish with One Spoon Covenant Treaty. So I would like to welcome everybody to the session this afternoon. And my name is Sheila Rhodes. I have been on the organizing committee for this conference for a couple of years now. And Ashley, if you wanted to introduce yourself, and then I will introduce our speaker.
Thank you, Sheila. Yeah, so I'm Ashley. I'm your Zoom host. I'm a current student at OISE. I'm also a teacher.
Excellent. And this afternoon, we are very grateful to have Bella Lam with us this afternoon. So Bella Lam is the Director of Programs at the Jane Goodall Institute of Canada. Roots and Shoots is a Jane Goodall Canada program that empowers young people to take action on sustainability issues and develop compassionate leadership skills. Bella has over 2 decades of experience working in sustainable development overseas and in Canada. She holds a Master of Science in Environmental and Development. So welcome, Bella. And we will be having the chat box open. And if you've got some questions that you would like to ask, Bella's open to answering them during the session. And also we will have time at the end of the session. And just as a reminder, this is the sessions are 50 minutes. So we'll just be aware of that time. So I'm going to turn it over to Bella, and we'll get started. So thank you, Bella.
Thank you, Sheila. Thank you, Ashley. Welcome, everybody. I would also like to just start the session by acknowledging the land that the Jane Goodall Institute of Canada's office is situated. So we acknowledge that the land upon which we operate has been a site of human activity for 15,000 years and is the traditional territory of the Huron-Wendat, the Petun First Nations, and the Seneca, and most recently the Mississaugas of the Credit. It is still home to many Indigenous people from across Turtle Island, and we're honored to have the opportunity to work in this territory. And the second thing that I would like to just highlight is, if you pre-registered for this session, you may have noticed that the original presenter is actually Charlotte Burke. I'm not Charlotte, and she's a colleague of mine. So unfortunately, she had an emergency that came up. So I'm going to do my best to pinch hit, and of course, we do work really closely together. But please bear with me. Just want to put that out there. And to add to that, although it is a good thing, I got my first COVID vaccine last night. So very happy, but just feeling a little bit woozy right now. But I'll promise that, we'll be able to get through the materials. And certainly I'm happy to, I'll put right now my contact information in the chat. So if you need to get a hold of myself or Charlotte at any point, feel free to just email me afterwards, if there's some questions that I'm not able to answer today. So with all those caveats, I'm just going to start the presentation. So give me 1 second as I share my screen. Great. So So Ashley, are you seeing this? Oh, sorry, I just have to go back to the original screen. Right. So is that showing up on everybody's screen? Ashley, yeah, perfect. So as I mentioned, this is a presentation about our program Roots and Shoots. I will certainly talk a little bit more about exactly what it is. Some of you actually may have heard of it or may have even used it. So just to start off very quickly in terms of our vision and mission. So the Jane Goodall Institute of Canada, we're part of actually a global family of communities, of conservation organizations, and we advance the vision and the work originally started by Dr. Jane Goodall. Although initially we started with protecting, or Dr. Goodall herself started with her now famous research on how to protect chimpanzees and understand our very close cousin. But the Roots and Shoots program is actually a part of coming out of that, understanding the interconnectedness between people, the animals that we hope to protect, and our environment. In Canada, we've established since 1997. We actually have a partnership with the University of Toronto, and that's where our office is based. There are two, as Sheila mentioned, I'm the director of programs. So under our programs, there are actually two main areas of work. One is what we call Africa programs. So this is the program where we're working directly with local communities on conservation, on endangered species, particularly primates, in what we call in the areas called Chimpscape. And that's just the habitat across sub-Saharan Africa where it's suitable for chimpanzees and other primates to make it a habitat. And we work in close proximity with the communities there to find local solutions. So in Africa, we're active in the Democratic Republic of Congo, Congo-Brazzaville, Uganda, Tanzania, and Senegal. Here at home in Canada, we have a program of what we call Roots and Shoots, and that's a program that I'm going to focus a little bit more on today, which is about sustainability and taking local actions. And before we start, as an introduction, I'm going to show a video which will give you a good overview of what Roots and Shoots is all about and how it actually got started, which is now over 30 years ago. We're celebrating the 30th anniversary of Roots and Shoots with Dr. Goodall herself sitting under a tree with 12 Tanzanian high school students who were telling her that, well, yes, conservation is great and we believe that, but there are also all these other issues in our communities that we can't really separate from conservation. And so from that very low-key meeting and just, really just speaking out loud and just trying to find out, what are some of the things we can do, the Roots and Shoots movement has grown globally and across the globe. We're in about 50 chapters. So let me just start this video.
Everybody laughed at me. You'll never do that. Africa's the dark continent's far away, you don't have any money, and you're a girl. But if you really want something, you have to never give up. It was what I'd always dreamed of. Roots and Shoots is about choosing to make the world a better place. Choosing projects to help people, to help other animals, and to help the environment. Anybody can start a Roots and Shoots project. It's about rolling up your sleeves and getting out there and doing it. You're going to do them with your friends who care about them too. You're going to know that you're part of groups of children all around the world, same age as you are, and you're going to have a lot of fun.
I thought it would be about vines and boring stuff like that. But now, when I've gone through
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry. Let me just say.
all that my teacher taught me, I'm like really interested in this. I would like to totally be exactly like Jane when I grow up.
Dr. Jane Goodall is really inspiring.
We'll be able to change the world.
Preserve it and take care of it because it is our future.
The most important message for Roots and Shoots is that every individual matters and every individual makes a difference every day.
I want to be like Jane Goodall.
We would like to be the next Jane Goodall.
I want to be the next Jane. And be monkey. Ooh, ooh, ah, ah, ooh, ooh, ah, ah.
Great. And so as you can see from that video, sorry, let me just, there we go. It's really, the key message is that it's about young people and it's about what the actions that young people can take. As I mentioned, from that very modest beginning in Tanzania with 12 young high school students, Roots and Shoots has grown to about 50 countries around the world, each doing their own projects, led by educators, led by young people themselves, trying to find a solution that is affecting some of the communities immediately where they're living in, but also thinking globally. Just want to spend a moment to talk about the theory of change and why we chose, like, you know, what we ultimately trying to do with the Roots and Shoots program. So as much as, you know, the actions that young people take are very empowering, they're very inspirational, but really it's the journey, and that is really what we're trying to do. I think working with educators, that message, hopefully that will resonate as well. What we're trying to do is knowing that if we can develop the skills and develop compassionate leadership for the next generation, when they get out into the world and when they're holding positions where they're then making decisions, they would then use that lens, you know, in their work, in their personal life, in their personal consumer habits, in the way they engage their communities and each other. So starting with that end in mind, kind of at the top of the hill we're trying to get to, really is looking at empowering young people, giving them a sense of hope, and giving them a sense of hope, not just a kind of blind faith, but really that, you know, sharing resources, sharing evidence-based, you know, information, so that they know that they themselves can make a difference. And, you know, through that empowerment, and through that understanding, you know, that's why it's so important to be youth-led. So it's not meant to be book learning where, you know, they are just taught a lesson about sustainability. They're the ones that we're asking them to, okay, you go out and you find a solution yourself and you try it, and you may fail and you may succeed, but there are lessons to be learned along the way. And it's really about them understanding their place in the community and their place in a more sustainable world. And part of that, as we move along, and which we'll talk about the fourth step in a few moments, but part of that is actually also for us to be able to measure that change. So one of the things that we do is we do a CAP survey, and some of you may know that tool, which is KAP, Knowledge, Attitude, Practice. So we do a pre and post survey, trying to measure where on any given particular subject, where the young people are before they start this Roots and Shoots journey, on their knowledge of a certain issue, and the attitude and the practice, and then do the same survey after. And although we know that, you know, imparting knowledge is just the first step, if you will. It's the first rung on the ladder. And just by simply having that information doesn't always translate to changing someone's attitude, and more importantly, empowering them to take actions. And that's where that empowerment and really that journey that I mentioned, that's why that part is so important, and it's a big focus for our work. So as I mentioned, you know, it's about young people, giving them the experience. And the area we focus on is really sustainability education, and sustainability in a very broad sense in terms of the intersectionality. So when we are talking to young people, we're not just talking about how do you save the environment, but we're actually getting them to ask questions, and obviously have to make it age appropriate. Written shoots, we have groups all the way from kindergarten to post-secondary groups, and so depending on where they are along that spectrum, we provide and encourage and kind of prompt them to think about the intersectionality from both environments that surrounds them, but also what are the social, the cultural, and the economic aspects that do play a factor in shaping whether or not we can have a more sustainable planet. And the term that we often share with young people is the definition, if you will, is like meeting the needs of the present without compromising the future generations to meet their own needs. And obviously, as young people, they have such there's so much at stake for them, because oftentimes it's actually our action today as adults that could impede on their ability to have a more healthier and sustainable planet. And in some ways, we're also encouraging young people to challenge the adults, in terms of what are some of the things that we're doing right now that is preventing them from, enjoying the same healthy planet in the future. So again, when we talk about sustainability, it's not just about the environment, it's also about animals and about people. And it's really that nexus between all three spaces that we're trying to encourage our young people to look at their projects. More recently, we are currently actually undergoing strategic planning here at the Jane Goodall Institute. And one of the things that we are looking into developing more our knowledge as well as our understanding on the whole One Health approach. Some of you may have heard of it, and One Health is basically looking at the intersectionality between the environmental health, the animal health, and the people's health, and understanding that you cannot achieve any one of those spheres without understanding the interconnectedness of all three. A perfect example, as I mentioned, I got my COVID-19 shot, are zoonotic diseases that we're seeing now. We're facing a pandemic a year in, which is looking at the degradation of that health and that connection and the intersection between animal, people, and environment. As zoonoses are basically a transfer of virus that can jump from species. Ebola is another example, which from our Africa programs that we deal with all the last couple of years with the outbreak in the DRC. And so conserving animals and conserving endangered species and protecting the environment is not just for their sake, but also for human health. And that's really the message that we're trying to get through. And so when we look at Roots to Shoots action projects, although they may focus a bit more on one of the three spheres, but we do, encourage young people to really look at that interconnectedness between all three.
Imagine if humans are a part of nature, not just stewards of it. Animals and plants are our relatives, not our resources. Water is sacred, and we are its protectors. We take only what we need from the earth, so there is enough for all. We collaborate rather than compete. We think about how our choices will impact the next 7 generations. We understand that we are all interconnected: people, other animals, our environment, all our relations. Imagine if we could weave these indigenous ways of life into all lives. Together, we could braid a path towards a world where every individual matters. Every individual plays a role in the global community. Every individual makes a positive difference every day. A world where compassion for people, for animals, for the environment unites us all.
So the video that you saw, we actually commissioned Indigenous and Métis artist, Amanda Strong, to help us create the artwork, as well as getting our partner to narrate the video, really to highlight, as part of that intersectionality, understanding and weaving in Indigenous perspectives is key to the success for any sustainability goals that we may have. And at Jane Goodall Institute, strategically, that is something that we see as a cross-cutting for all of our programs in Canada. That's something that, starting, obviously, beyond the land acknowledgement, for sure, that's, I think, just the very base step in terms of understanding and acknowledging the communities that have been here and have stewarded this land for thousands of years before us, but also moving forward, that we can't really attain true sustainability without understanding the Indigenous perspectives in that work. So this is a famous quote of Jane that she always talks about. And the one message that she always tries to talk about to get out there is that every individual matters. Every individual has a role to play, and every individual makes a difference. And why that is so powerful and why there's a message we're always trying to get out is so that, again, it's about empowering young people who, especially, in a year into the pandemic, when young people are more isolated than ever, they may not see themselves as able to do too much. There are a lot of restrictions on right now, for sure, physically, but at the same time, we want to show that there are decisions at a very even micro level that they can make, and globally, that it will make a difference if everybody start to play their role. So in terms of for educators and for community organizations that we work with, so the mission is really to guide young people through a Roots and Shoots project. And this example here you see is a medicine wheel with the Roots and Shoots school in Lancome, Alberta, that we supported. And so that's often the balance that we're trying to strike when we're working with educators and youth. So obviously, as I mentioned, depending on the age group of the young people, there might be times that the educator or the adult in that group needs to do more guiding and providing them with the tools. But we really do, at the end of the day, want to make sure that there may be some prompts and maybe some guidance, but in the end, the ideas themselves should be coming from the young people. And we have seen projects from coast to coast where young people as young as, in primary grades, they do have great ideas, and they actually way more excited when it's something that they feel like they are implementing and they have ownership over it, and they get to call the shots in terms of what they want to do. So that part of experiential learning, I'm sure is not new to many of you on the call, but that's something that we definitely takes into a huge part of our consideration when we're reviewing Roots and Shoots projects that we would grant funding to. And then in terms of the Roots and Shoots actual action projects, so it's basically we want them to focus on something local, like within their own communities. Again, just try to see how their own immediate action can make a difference. But it could also be a series of actions. They could also join forces with neighboring schools. So they're, in terms of the type of projects, they really are quite unlimited, and it's just up to the imagination of the young people. And I'm just going to talk through the 4-step journey, what we call, and I'll go through each one in a little more detail. So for all Roots and Shoots projects, the tool that we use is what we call this 4-step journey. The first one is just to inspire them, give them something to get excited about, engage them, talk about some of the reasons why sustainability is important. And again, depending on the age group of the students, it may be already very intrinsic to the day-to-day work. The step 2 is then taking that passion and taking that curiosity, and we do what we call mapping, community mapping, and that's really one of the main tools we use for designing the actual Roots and Shoots projects. So once they've done the mapping, they're actually going to take a sustainable action that they have designed. And then the last step is about celebrating the good things that came out of it, celebrating the learning, and also measuring impact. So I'll just go through each step in a little bit more details. But again, feel free to stop me anytime. I'm not really monitoring the chat, so maybe I'll ask Ashley if there are questions, just let me know. And as I mentioned before, like going through these 4 steps, like the journey and the experiential learning that the young people go through, in the end, it is really why we do Roots and Shoots. And it's actually less about whatever the action project may be. And like I said, even if, and during this past year, we've really put that to the test, because for a lot of young people, they are not able to carry out the plan as they had hoped. They've had to pivot, they've had to do things more virtually, and the actual projects may have changed, in terms of what they originally envisioned, but still going through that process. So we consider that a success. It is actually, that's the more important part of the learning. Again, just talk about engage and inspiring. So this is where, for the Jane Goodall Institute, when we do presentations, oftentimes we use Jane herself as the figure of inspiration. We talk about how, and you've seen that in the video, how Jane and her message as, a young woman, back in the 60s, when it was unheard of, for a young woman unaccompanied, did not have a degree, to go out and, work with, looking at basically doing PhD level type of data collection, and living out in the bush. So that took a lot of courage, that took a lot of strength, inner strength, but also belief that you can make a difference. So we, sometimes we will share Jane's story, how, she, from that, just starting off with a dream and determination that that's something she wants to do. She's passionate about nature, down to this amazing discovery that she noticed through her hard work and direct research and observation about chimpanzees also use tools. Because back in the 60s, it was believed that, human is the only species on Earth that, we are called the tool makers. We're the only only species in the world that actually use and manipulate with tools. And Dr. Louis Leakey, which is her mentor, basically said that, famous quote that we must now refine tool, redefine man, or accept chimpanzees as humans. So now from those, early days, just living in the forest, she's now giving, obviously not physically right now with the pandemic, but she's giving talks, she's inspiring a whole new generation. She travels when she was able to, like 365 days a year, giving talks, talking to decision makers, empowering young people and challenging this, politicians and other key stakeholders on what they can do to make a difference. And currently she's just online all the time doing the same thing. But also, I think it's also important in the classrooms to also not looking at a figure as powerful, as amazing as Dr. Jane is. There are a lot of local heroes as well. And especially now with a new generation, you may have a whole new generation that really don't know much about Jane Goodall, Dr. Goodall, and understandably so. They've grown up, here, maybe in an urban setting, in a city in Canada. Maybe they've never, they may not have originally a passion to look up scientists who's doing, nature studies, but there are also a lot of, younger people as well, right? So there is that generation gap that we can try to fill. It could be someone famous like Greta Thunberg, which, most young people know about, and her fight against climate change. So using figures like that, using examples that she's been trying to do in terms of looking at, empowering a movement really of young people her age to talk about climate change. But it could also be someone even more local, like Autumn Peltier, who is this amazing, articulate and compelling young Indigenous youth who's been fighting, for clean water, fighting for more sustainability, fighting to get a message about her communities. And there's so many other more people. And so we definitely do encourage on that first step to go beyond Jane, talk about the local heroes, that young people can actually relate to. The second step, which is observe and map, this is the tool we call community mapping. And we actually have a whole separate online guide that I'm happy to, if you get in touch with us by the email, we're happy to send it to you by email. And maybe before the end of the talk today, I'll find that spot on our website and just throw in the link. So community mapping is a tool that we actually started doing with the Africa programs, the countries that I mentioned. And it's a way to bring together the key stakeholders around, and this is literally something that we would do. sometimes when we're coming into community, the local people already know where the issues are. For example, if we're trying to deal with a human-wildlife conflict, they can very easily identify, where these hot spots are and why that may be. And then for them to actually then show on the map where they're seeing where, for example, where there's forest degradation, where there's some agriculture communities that is maybe planting in an unsustainable way. And it's through these dialogue and in a very visual way, sharing it, that's how we're able to communicate, what are some of the common grounds that we can work on. And so again, just to use a different platform in those communities, oftentimes there's a language barrier, there's a literacy barrier, but then everyone can look on the same map visually and understand the same thing. And also, I think with young people, they do in this age of technology, they do engage a lot more, with some of the digital tools that are available. And I'm going to try to show you one from our chapter in Hong Kong and what they've done.
Find what was wrong with the neighborhood and to ask maybe how people felt about it.
Yeah.
We went to observe things in our community in Wan Chai Pai, and we also tried to interview some locals to try and to find out what was happening in our community and what we need to fix in our community.
Right now we're making a map. So where we're putting all the problems we found onto a Google map.
We can send it to people to let them know that this is where we found some problems, so maybe they could help fix these problems.
It was quite surprising because I actually know some of those things, like that one where the sign was pointing the wrong way. Like I've gone up that road so many times and I've actually never seen it.
When you just look out the window, you never realize these small problems.
Yeah.
But once you actually are determined to do it and you just walk around, you can actually see that there are a lot of things that we can work on and fix.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay, so in terms of, so that's just an example from, like I said, one of our partners, one of the Regent Street chapters in Hong Kong, where the educators like taking their class outside and just start asking questions. And so one of the things is just, so again, it depends on the age of the students. So sometimes it might be, they just walk around the school grounds, like if it's kindergarten classes, and we have done that as well. Oh, sorry, is my mic okay now? Or is it still cutting in and out?
Yeah, just cutting in and out. So maybe if you could just stay in one location, that might help.
Sure, I'm just trying, is this better?
Yeah, it's fine now. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Thanks.
Sorry about that. So, part of that is just, looking at the age group that's appropriate. It could just literally be walking, around the school ground and asking about questions. So some of them, if they're older, you can actually take them, you can actually take them around the neighborhood and, asking questions, for example, so asking, you can select, and then when they go kind of walk through their communities and they kind of identify things that they like to change, maybe it's not enough green space, maybe there's not enough grocery store, maybe their communities in the fruit desert, and they need to bring that to the attention of of the local, decision makers. Just to give you one example, one of our schools in Winnipeg, Winnipeg School Division 1, they did a community mapping where they got the students to basically walk around. Can you show high school examples? Yes, actually, I'm going to share for Ria. I'm going to talk about a high school example right now. So what they have done was, this is actually a junior high, but I do have some high school examples also. So this is a junior high at a Winnipeg school, and they basically walked a map around the school community, and they found needles, they found a lot of unsafe areas. So they took pictures of it, they wrote a letter to the mayor, and actually they delivered that letter in person. They asked for a meeting with the mayor, and basically asking, and one of the students put up the hand and asked the mayor, well, when you walk your kids to school this morning, what did you see? And then the mayor, kind of answered, and then the students kind of talked about then what they saw, and then kind of asking, how can they make the streets safer? And it was so compelling that one of the staffer at the municipal office actually, pulled the teacher aside and saying, like, did you set this up? And she's like, no, this is all coming from the kids, and holding decision makers accountable. So something like that, more along that line, definitely for older age group, you can definitely encourage them to do. We have an example right now, actually, is with our high schools. We did a food security and sustainable food campaign where they're doing a food audit of the school cafeteria, and they're finding out what the sustainability issues, ranging from one-time use plastics or things that are unsustainable versus the kind of food that's being served in the cafeteria, and just looking at options. So they so doing a food audit is another way that for some of the older kids, junior high or high school, that they can do. So then the next step, so once they've identified the issues, they've kind of gone out and they map, they figure out what the issue may be. Again, so this is where the educator can play that facilitating role. You're prompting questions. What are you seeing? Oh, we see that. Why do you think that is? And just, prompting them if they're not, if they're having some trouble coming up with some of the issues. And then once they do see it, then basically work with them, say, okay, here's the problem. What do you think, some of the solutions that we can do as young people, as a class? And then they actually design an action project. And this is where Roots and Shoots from our program, GGI Canada, and we actually provide funding for the schools and for the classes to carry out the action projects. If it's buying materials, if it's doing a school trip, if it's bringing a speaker in, whatever the budget needs are, and it's typically up to about $1,000, between I think most of them are about $800 that we give out in grants, mini grants. And so that's, again, just a very direct way that the young people can take actions and see something that they can do. In terms of the types of action, this kind of speaks to some of what school level, what age level they may be. So it could just be, not just, it could be to educate, right? So they may be finding out a situation that, informing the community, about, okay, so there are, let's say, a lot of trash in the neighborhood that, there is a problem with that. Or it could be something about, that there are very little green space for young people to be in. So they're just raising their awareness. It could also be restoring. So some of our schools have actually done school gardens. Some of the schools have actually worked with the local communities to, build out, restore a small piece of land. And some of them have tied it in with sustainable food. They actually, restore a piece of land and put a greenhouse in that area. I showed the medicine wheel as an earlier slide to kind of protect a certain green space or a sacred space. It could be to motivate. So, we've ran a Recycle Your Cell Phone campaign a couple of years ago. So it's motivating young people to make better consumer choices that are more sustainable, and running campaigns. And as young people, especially teenagers, are great at, amplifying their voices on social media and getting people care about these actions that they themselves are, they can directly take because they are consumers of goods and services as well. Things like trying to not buy fast fashion, or looking at, trying to go plastic free. These are all the things that, to motivate other young people to do, and adults also, I want to add. And last but not least, and certainly to advocate, we have currently we have our Youth Advisory Council, which are in actually post-secondary age. They are doing a letter writing campaign, in terms of a bill that's sitting, with the Parliament right now on climate change and accountability. So it could be something at a national level, holding, decision makers accountable. It could be something very local to talk about their counselors if there's an issue. And so again, that would be age appropriate. And the young people, I find that they can take up that advocating for action very quickly. Is something that they have a lot of tools actually through social media that they're very savvy of. So these are just some types, and it's certainly not limited to that. So I'm just highlighting some of the key types of actions. And so just again, like a smattering of different actual projects that we've done. I talked about, doing a garden, greenhouses, and planting 3 sister gardens, worm composting, doing butterfly, doing bee pollinating. And sometimes it's just, changing something, putting on a show at the school to educate, other students on a sustainability issue. So really their imagination is the limit. It's really anything that they want to do. And the last step, which is celebrating impact, as I mentioned, I think it's really important for the young people to know, what is the difference that they're trying to do, what's the change that they're trying to see. And as I mentioned, we do what we call a CAP survey, the knowledge, attitude, practice. So you can actually see some of and we have tools. It's a very quick survey to help educators ask the students, about their change. And we do have a very simple report that we trying to educate young people about some of the changes that they are seeing, and sharing that report with us. Because what we're also trying to do at a meta level, aggregate some of all these learnings and just kind of paint. We're actually currently working on a Google Map tool to kind of map all the different school projects that we have been supporting. So some of the reporting to measure the impact, to celebrate those successes will also help us learn better in terms of what tools have worked, what hasn't, and we all can also be a conduit of sharing that information. So just a quick recap. We talked about in terms of the community mapping part. Maybe we can just go. I think we have to end in, if I'm not mistaken, how many more minutes do I have, Ashley?
We've got 7.
7 minutes. Okay. So maybe I'll take just quickly just to show you, some of the very quick snapshot of projects that we've supported over the years. So you can see they are really across the country. They have going from bird habitats to looking at connecting with the Ojibwe garden, to talking about vermiculture, looking at waste, and so on and so forth. So it's really wide ranging. We do have examples on the website as well if you want to find out more information. So in terms of the 8 fund that 8 funds for animals, people, environment, I briefly mentioned that we do give out mini grants. So the cycle is the application usually opens in October, so just after school starts, so educators or young people themselves can submit a proposal. It's an online portal. We then have selection criteria, and some of the things that I mentioned, like is it youth-led? Does it look at the intersectionality? Does it try to weave in an Indigenous perspective where it is applicable? And more importantly, we also have a focus on working with a lower socioeconomic and vulnerable communities. So does that also include that? So then we then decide on the projects in December, January, and we announce who are the successful applicants that get the funding. And we usually send out the funds in February. And then the project typically then happens in the spring, and then closing off with the academic calendar with the reporting in May, June. So so that is, I just want to, before I go into a little bit more details about community mapping exercise, are there any quick questions that I can answer?
There was one question earlier. Somebody shared a link, and I think it was Bruce. I'm just confirming if the link he found was correct. A mapping tool resource link. I'll put it, I'll copy it again into the chat.
Sure. My chat box kind of gone away. I will, okay, here we go. Yes, that is our website. Yeah, because sometimes there's a other, like oftentimes people go to the Jingle US site versus ours, but yes, that is correct. Thanks, Bruce, for finding that. So the community mapping exercise, again, I don't think we have